Hello again. This is Edward Perry, and I just want to continue with the introduction and the discussion that we were having concerning the economics through, or the empowerment through economics and entrepreneurship. Um, we were talking about equal rights and how we've really been pressing over the last really the last few years with various events that have taken place as far as young African American males or young African Americans in general being killed, some at the hand of police and in other instances. So, uh, as I was discussing uh, how legislation is a key to us not only uh, legislating or making policies that dictate equal rights, but making sure that it gets enforced. Now, earlier, I talked about Professor Karenga's cultural celebration that was created in the 60s, Kwanzaa. You know, they first, if I'm not mistaken, they first celebrated it in 1966, you know, the 66 going into 67, because the celebration begins December 26th and ends on January 1st. Um, Again, I want to stress those principles should not just be an annual cultural celebration, but those principles should become a part of our character and our culture as African Americans, because they all speak to not just our creative abilities and our trust and faith and belief systems, but one of the things that they really focus on is unity and pooling our resources, whether it's intellectual resources, financial resources, whatever that may be. And so when we're talking about getting equal rights, we really have to join in together. We have to be united. So I was talking about policy making and legislation. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I stated earlier, or mentioned maybe briefly, that anyone can write a bill um, as a proposal for a new law. But again, it requires an elected member of the said legislative body that you're presenting that bill to sponsor it. So get a professional bill writer or what have you, but we have to get a member of that legislative body to sponsor it. So I used the United States Congress as an example. So say it's something we want to introduce to the House. We've got to get a U.S. representative, a member of the House of Representatives to sponsor that bill, to introduce it. It has to go to committee, and they take their various actions, hearings, they'll have reviews. It has to go to a rules committee in the House anyway. Um, and then the point is to get it to the floor so that there can be a floor debate to discuss it, the, the those who are for it, those who are against it, and then ultimately get it to lead to a vote. It can go to a conference committee, but if it passes in the House, then that same bill has to go through the same process through the Senate. If you get it passed both in the House and the Senate, then it can go to the president, and the president can either sign it into law, or if he doesn't agree with it, he can use his veto. And the only way that you can override a veto is by a two-thirds majority uh, vote of the Congress to override his veto, or he can just not take action on it and leave it sitting on his desk so that the bill dies. But this is just a quick glimpse into how we get legislation in place. And to influence getting that legislation in place, like I said, we have to pool our votes, to put the right people in place to sponsor the bills for us, and we have to pool our finances so that we can hire professional lobbyists to influence those members of that legislative body to vote in favor of those policies or that legislation that's going to be beneficial to our community. All right, so let me move on. The next slide, I have some information. It's entitled, What Causes This? We're talking about entrepreneurship, small businesses. Small businesses are responsible for 55% of all U.S. jobs. They're responsible for 65% of all new jobs that are created in the United States. And the reason that the United States has, at least in the past and to some degree now, has experienced a strong middle class is because of the opportunities that come from small businesses. That whole small business entrepreneurship concept promotes our ideal of free market capitalism. And so in our community, we've got to get back to business ownership. We've got to, I talked about the dollar only spending 6 hours circulating in our community as opposed to days in other cultural communities. We've got to get back to owning small businesses in our community so that we can deposit the monies we make in banks that are in our community. We can pay taxes in our community. We can reinvest in our communities, and both in the infrastructure, the physical aspects of our communities, and the people in our community. And when we talk about a small business, typically just the general guide or definition is any business that employs less than 500 people. Now, depending on the industry or agricultural, the annual receipts varies. So let's just use that as a baseline. Less than 500 people, by the Small Business Administration standards, you're a small business. And that is the backbone of our nation. And like I said, prior to integration, when we were segregated, we had strong communities with black ownership, black businesses, and support of people in the community. So we've got to get back to that. My closing slide for this quick segment is success. When preparation meets opportunity, you get success. In other words, you've got to be ready for that moment when it arrives. When that opportunity comes, don't have to make excuses or I need to go back or be prepared so that when that maybe opportunity will only knock once for you. So be prepared. Preparation meeting opportunity equals success. Or I like to take it to another saying, chance favors a prepared mind. So when your chance comes, make sure that make sure you're prepared, you're ready for it. So some of the things that will get us there is we've got to plan. Don't stop doing things haphazardly. There's nothing wrong with spontaneity, being, impromptu type things, but you need to have a plan. We say those who fail to plan to fail. Okay, have a plan in place. Know what you're trying to, the goal you're trying to reach, and the steps that you're going to use to get to that goal. Study, open a book, get from in front of the electronics and the video games and the reality TV shows. Nothing against them or TV in general, but open a book and study and read. Yes, there's a lot of information available on the internet too, but you have to be careful. Get books that have been vetted, especially scholarly books. When you're looking for information on a particular subject area or an industry, get something that has been a scholarly journal that's been reviewed by peers within that particular field. Something that's credible with credible information. Follow through. Stop meeting, greeting, talking, yelling, screaming, whatever, without taking any follow-up action or any action. Follow through with, if you make a plan, if you make a promise, if you make a threat even, and I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but follow through with action, and then follow up. Okay, so you can't do it all yourself. So if you delegate it to somebody else or somebody else is in charge of make sure you follow up to ensure that it happens. Don't just abandon it. Research. Information is key to success. So take the time to do some credible research. You may not know everything, but if you know how to research, if you know how to find things and search for things, you will be successful. Innovate. If it doesn't exist, create it. Find a need and meet that need. And be innovative. And then transformation. Make a change. Start with where you are. Change that's immediately around you or close to you, and then branch out. Biblically, we talk about being witnesses for Christ. If you look at Acts, the first chapter, around the 8th verse, he talks about his power, his spirit coming upon us so that we'll be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. Start with change where you are, and then help effect change or transform things, on a global basis. So anyway, that's enough for now. Thank you for your time. Again, if you have interest in more of the information from this mentorship workshop, or if this has been helpful to you, click that thumbs up button. That will help me out. And then click on subscribe and subscribe to my channel. I promise you I will continue to provide more information. Send me suggestions of information that you're interested in, topics or what have you. Or if you need me to give you more information on a particular topic. I'm on Facebook under Ed Perry. I'm on Twitter under Ed Perry, or my handle is EB Perry. But thank you so much for your time and your attention.